Disney classics, original programs, National Geographic, Marvel TV shows and movies, Star Wars. Now, these are just some of the choices you'll get on Disney Plus. And this is the podcast for Disney Plus fans. Join Scott Murray, Regina Davis, and Nathan Chick as they bring you breaking news, programming recaps, in-depth discussions, and insightful interviews that will take your Disney Plus fandom to new levels. Welcome to the Disney Plus Streamcast.
Hi everyone, it's another episode of the Disney Plus Streamcast, and we are another day closer to the launch of Disney Plus. Thanks for joining us. I'm Scott Murray.
And I'm Regina Davis.
Regina, I'm looking forward to the podcast when we get to recap the Disney Plus announcements at D23. But it was also kind of good to get a few more details about the Marvel shows at Comic-Con.
Dude, that episode is going to be a big deal. There is quite a bit to unpack. So much Disney Plus knowledge. I'm really excited for that one.
I am too. We're just about a month away from that. But the big takeaways were that these Marvel shows featured on Disney Plus will be part of this MCU Phase 4. And that means we have some release dates.
That is the good news. The bad news is we're going to have to wait a little while for these. So it looks like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show will be launching in the fall of 2020. The Loki series will be out spring of 2021. WandaVision is going to be coming out spring of 2021 as well. Then the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness movie will actually tie into that WandaVision series. The What If series will be around somewhere in the summer of 2021. And the Hawkeye Kate Bishop series is going to be in the fall of 2021.
Everybody got that? Wow, that is a full lineup. It's hard to believe, too, we're talking about 2021.
I know. 2021 is going to be awesome, though.
It is. It's going to be a good year. Well, even though WandaVision doesn't come out until 2021, we're still going to talk about Scarlet Witch and the Vision today.
Which I still think is a good idea, because while we're waiting to get more details on what's going to happen in those TV shows, we can at least give you some context about the Scarlet Witch, the Vision, and their comic book history.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we can tell you what to go read if you want to dive deeper into that history. It's what we do every 2 weeks on Comic Book Noob.
But before we talk about the world of WandaVision, we need to talk about the world of news.
And that's Nathan's world. It's time for News with Nathan.
Hey guys, how's it going?
So good. How are you?
Oh, I'm just all hopped up on San Diego Comic-Con news.
Right.
And I figured
weekend.
It's like Nerd Mecca, and everyone who's anyone in the business is there, apart from, the House of Mouse formerly, because they save all that good stuff for the D23.
Mm-hmm.
But not to say that there weren't some other bits and pieces out and about. I guess we'll start with the more sort of global big picture, though. Avengers Endgame, officially biggest movie of all time, announced this weekend. 2.8 billion at the box office. 2.8 billion. That's a lot of cheesy gordita crunches. I don't know. I mean, 21 movies to get there. Obviously, payoff worth it for them. You got to think, back in the day, that was a humble $4 billion investment.
Yeah.
By Disney when they bought Marvel, and the money they've recouped over those movies so far. I think I read, was it 16 or 18 billion in box office? Now, obviously, that's a gross. It doesn't account for marketing. It doesn't account for the making of the movies. But it also doesn't account for the money they make in merchandising and everything else that goes along with that. So Bob Iger earning his paycheck right there.
When they put up the big graphic at Comic-Con that showed everything that's coming in like the next 2 years, and then Kevin Feige goes, oh, and by the way, after all this, Guardians 3 and Captain Marvel 2 and all that stuff is coming out in 2022. So, I mean, you can tell how successful this Marvel Studios venture has been when you look at everything they're lining up year after year after year.
And I mean, something that we've talked about many times is how this is such an immense accomplishment for, just all these movies over all this time. And then for it to culminate so beautifully and so well is just massive. And so, I knew that there was going to be some sort of, financial representation of the magnitude of these films. But, I would not be surprised if they top themselves again at some point. Because, like you mentioned, Scott, all that stuff that they're lining up with the way that they accomplished Endgame so well, it's just got people even more hyped. So they're basically setting themselves up to do something like this all over again.
And if they're not going to get you with the superheroes, Disney's just going to get you with one of their other properties. Lion King released this weekend. Every article I've read about Lion King and how well it's doing or not, depending on if you ask the critics, it says something like the king of the movie jungle is back, or roared into the theaters this weekend. Like, yeah, good one, boys. Original, like it. But nevertheless, $185 million for their opening weekend. That's the 9th biggest opening of all time. It's the biggest July opening ever. I think it's also the biggest PG-rated opening ever. So critics, some like it, some absolutely hate it. Maybe it's a remake that we didn't actually need. Some folks are just really digging the extra music. I guess there's a new Elton John song, and obviously you got leads in Donald Glover and Beyonce, who I think are killing it with the Spotify plays right now. The people who don't like it, people who do like it, they all agree that Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen really steal the show as Timon and Pumbaa. I'm not going to watch it because it's not my cup of tea. There's other things that Jon Favreau does that I'm a bit more interested in, but still, killer weekend for Disney. I think I also read that they are responsible for 35% of all box office receipts this year so far.
Oh,
just yeah. Disney, that's
that
crazy.
That is a huge number.
Yeah, I've talked before about how, there are those out there who want to knock the superhero genre and some of the other geek-oriented films that come out. When you put that up against how outside of that, for all intents and purposes, Hollywood is struggling at the box office, imagine what Hollywood would be going through right now without the explosion of geek culture films in the box office.
I agree. I think they should be thanking all of us.
That's right.
Right.
We're keeping it afloat.
Yeah, Jon Favreau, again, did his tricks on Lion King like he had done before on Jungle Book, like he'd done before on Iron Man, and he's doing right now on Mandalorian Season 2, already in pre-production. Disney's so excited about how the first one turned out. They've given him another crack at it. So that's what he's doing right now. And we haven't even seen the first one. So it's got to be good if they're all in on it already. Yeah, I wonder if it's not them trying to gird our loins for the eventual disappointment that will be the next Abrams Star Wars movie. I realize that I probably shouldn't. Hot take, right? I don't know.
I mean, go ahead, because I'll just say I'm hoping JJ fixes what Ryan did.
Mm-hmm. All are welcome here.
All I could say, though, is that the most interesting bit of Star Wars news I saw this week was, again, The Mandalorian. Never mind the fact that, they're doing all the Sith Trooper stuff at SDCC, and they're saying about all the cool stuff that's going to come out. And Kevin Smith is like, oh my gosh, you wait until you see the last shot of Rise of Skywalker. It's going to melt your mind. Kevin Smith, he's a lovely man and he seems like a great dad, but he hasn't done anything that I wanted to watch since Chasing Amy, so I really don't care what he says. But the bit that I take from Star Wars news like this week that is really important to me, important figuratively, Hasbro, as part of their Black Series, is bringing out a replica Boba Fett helmet later on this year. So, if you decide that you don't want to throw your money at any of the Episode 9 merch, you can get yourself a Boba Fett helmet, $120. It's wearable. It's got an articulated viewfinder attachment. It's got a light-up rangefinder. And, it's, Boba Fett, right? He looks cool. He's not actually cool. He kind of got sorted out by a blind dude and dumped in, an upside-down sea urchin in a sandpit. I mean, that's cool, but he does look cool, and it is a cool-looking piece of paraphernalia. So if you've got 120 bones to spare, then there's always that.
Yeah, it's perfect for casual Friday at work.
Absolutely.
That actually seems like a pretty fair price point
for
such an articulated product. That seems very reasonable.
Yeah, the proper helmet, as worn by Boba Fett, I understand, prevents you from blaster rays and disintegrations. This one, if you wear that, it will defend you from getting respect from your peers and things like that. But that's okay. That's just absolutely fine. You buy what you want to buy. I was out at 8 o'clock in the morning this last Thursday buying San Diego Comic Con exclusive Funko Pops
Oh
all over the
yeah.
place. So, we all have our vices and the things that we're not too proud of. So, you do you, Boba Fett fans. That's all good. You mentioned what's coming up in the Phase 4 slate a little earlier, but I want to call out a few highlights from that panel. It is more or less online, apart from the footage. Feige apparently said that, Feige, like I know him, Mr. Kevin Feige, to me and everyone else. He said that you could record it so long as you didn't record any of the proper footage, all the sneak peeks. Now, that does pop up online, and if you get lucky, you'll see it, but it's coming down as fast as they're putting it up. So you might have to be a bit patient. Not that I'd ever recommend that you look at bootleg sources and things like that. But a couple of bits of note. During the Falcon and Winter Soldier segment, whenever they turned the mic back over to Kevin Feige, he was interrupted by a video where you heard Bucky Barnes' trigger words being said. And then Daniel Bruhl comes onto the camera, apparently wearing his purple mask, and he's got his full collar. They're really leaning into the Baron Zemo look.
Oh.
And so that excited me because I love me some Baron Zemo. So that's going to be cool if they run with it. I don't know how they're going to reconcile him being the bad guy. I guess he could have, I don't know, escaped from the raft. I mean, he is sort of super elite commander. Or maybe just after the snap, when he came back around, everyone else was busy doing whatever they're doing, and he just legged it off the raft or something. I don't know, but whatever happens, I'm excited to see it because I really like that guy, and I really like Baron Zemo.
Me too, and I really like that. I think Marvel has gotten more and more comfortable about having sort of screen accurate looks that are more resembling the comic book design of characters, even though, they're a little bit out there. We saw with Mysterio, they basically ripped his design right off the page, when I think maybe 10 years ago they wouldn't have done that. But everybody's so on board now. They're just like, bring on the people.
Yeah, I think we just have a palette for it. I think we're just ready for it, It's cool whenever they try and keep it grounded, but at the same time, when it really leans into the mythology and your memories of the character, then I think you just appreciate it that much more. We talked about WandaVision a little bit earlier. Gonna feature a grown Monica Rambeau. Excited for that. One of my favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
Powers out the wazoo. Used to be a Captain Marvel. Used to lead the Avengers. My favorite Monica Rambeau, though, and probably not the one you're gonna see in WandaVision. If you've never read Next Wave, Agents of Hate, I recommend it, unless, of course, you're young, in which case I do not, because it's really inappropriate.
Oh, it's super inappropriate. Oh, my God, yeah.
Warren Ellis on a tear there with Stuart Immonen. Really, really fantastic. But don't tell your mum and dad if you are younger that I told you to read it, because it's bad. But no, really, Monica Rambeau.
She is on the current Ultimates team, and if you're younger and can't read something like Next Wave, you can definitely pick that up.
See, coming in clutch with the save. That's what I appreciate about you, Regina. That's great. Thank you. Also, we say WandaVision leaning into Doctor Strange 2, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. They're saying that one's going to be more like a horror movie. And honestly, if you wanted a psychological horror tone in the MCU, with some of the stuff that Scarlet Witch gets up to, that's probably where you want to go with it. So I know you'll probably talk about that a little bit later on, because she's completely crackers and cuckoo at times. So that'll be fun if we see some of the crazy come out during that. The What If featurette thing they put up there, the placard showing the logo and all the stars on board for it, was pretty tantalizing to me. Most of the MCU stars that we know and love are back on board. There's only a few that aren't. I think a couple of notable omissions, Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, but there are a few pairings or groups in there that I was super excited to see. Michael B. Jordan and Chadwick Boseman, they're on it. So if there was a what if Killmonger was the king of Wakanda forever and ever, or what if they were mates, I'd be down for it. I noticed that Haley Atwell and Dominic Cooper, Neil Madonna were all on there as well. So we're going to see some more Peggy Carter. And I know we stand for Peggy Carter on this podcast.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And also Michael Rooker and Sean Gunn. So you're going to see Yondu and Kraglin. We're going to get some more Marauders. And I love me some Mary Poppins too. So we're all about that. So that's going to be great.
Me too. Yeah, the other thing that was obviously a big part of that was getting some more details on the Black Widow movie. And I'm looking at something that Andy Park just shared on Twitter. And it is a reveal of a keyframe illustration that he did for the Black Widow movie. And it's her fighting Taskmaster.
Yes. He has photographic reflexes. They say the action in that is very Jason Bourne. It's very sort of physical, kinetic, grounded in reality. He's got a sword and a shield, so I'm not sure how that bit plays into it. But honestly, Taskmaster is one of my favorite villains. He, in the comics, he can look at you fight and he can emulate your fighting style just by watching you. So he can throw kicks like Danny Rand. He can do the archery thing like Clint Barton. So I feel like we're in for some really, really awesome action scenes in that. I can't wait for that one. Yes. That was going to be great.
Oh, have we done a Taskmaster comic book noob episode? We need to, because we can talk about how he hates mimicking Moon Knight, because Moon Knight is just too crazy and violent.
He'd rather take a punch than block a punch. Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Ooh, Nathan, I love you so much right now.
Oh, same. I love you 3000.
Oh, no.
Nice.
So the Hawkeye show, which is coming, the logo looks suspiciously like the same logo from the Matt Fraction, David Aja run back in the day, which is what got me back into comics. If it's anything like that, we're in for a treat, guys. The fact that they're talking Kate Bishop, if it's snarky Kate Bishop, again, I'm going to love it. That's going to be great. Taika Waititi back on board for Thor, Love and Thunder, which isn't my favorite title, but it's easier for me to pronounce than Thor 4. Had to take my time with that one. Tessa Thompson back as Valkyrie. Natalie Portman back as Jane Foster. And that's going to lean into the Jason Aaron run of the Mighty Thor, where the Odin son himself was unworthy and Jane Foster was worthy. So she got to wield Mjolnir and she became Thor. And that was awesome.
It was awesome. One of the best Thor costumes ever.
Yes. So we're ready for some of that. And just at the end, as a throwaway, like you mentioned, Scott, they've got all this money already and it's not enough. They just keep you on the line. They just want to reel you in slowly and slowly. They said, hey, that's all we have. And we don't even have time to talk about Black Panther 2 and Captain Marvel 2 and Guardians 3 and the Fantastic Four and Mutants. Oh, and by the way, have you met our new Blade? It's Michelle, I can't say his name properly.
Yes. Yeah. Who was awesome as Cottonmouth.
But we're excited for a new Blade, aren't we?
So much so.
And that's what I've got.
Awesome.
Loved it. Awesome.
You didn't have any trouble finding news for this week, that's for sure, with all that stuff coming out.
Yeah, not until Saturday.
That was just one panel. You think about that. So much stuff came out of Comic-Con, but we definitely wanted to cover some Marvel talk, which we're going to continue to do here shortly. And Nathan, you're going to stay with us for our discussion on WandaVision, or at least Scarlet Witch and the Vision in the comics, and why people need to be kind of interested in this and what it all means and why they decided to do this.
Yes, indeed. I'm looking forward to it.
That's next on the Disney Plus Streamcast. Since our last episode, we've connected with more of you on Twitter. We'd like to thank you for following us there, and we hope you liked getting the San Diego Comic-Con news updates about Disney Plus, because they were plentiful.
Yes, they were. And if you haven't had a chance to follow us, we're at Disney Plus Cast, and not only did we share some news stories, but we also posted a new online poll. So the question this time was, if you could make a guest star appearance on one of these Disney Plus shows, which would it be? Your choices were The Mandalorian, one of the Marvel shows. See, Twitter only gives you 4 options, so all I could do was one of the Marvel shows. The High School Musical series, or Jeff Goldblum, The World According to Jeff Goldblum. I couldn't put that in there, so it just says Jeff Goldblum doc series. But it's the one he's doing for Nat Geo, National Geographic, called The World According to Jeff Goldblum. So, those are your choices. Mandalorian, Marvel show, High School Musical, or Jeff Goldblum's series. How do you think these shook out?
Okay, I think it's Mandalorian number 1, and then it's either Marvel show or Jeff Goldblum as number 2, because there's so much good content in the Marvel show category, but who doesn't want to hang out with Jeff Goldblum? So I'm going to say Jeff Goldblum number 2, Marvel show number 3, High School Musical number 4, because you're a jokester.
Nathan?
I think there might be some serious gender bias on that poll, so I might want a bit more data to see who was actually voting, because I know if it's me, I'm saying Marvel show, Mandalorian, High School Musical, Jeff Goldblum, but I know if it's someone of the fairer sex, then it's Jeff Goldblum, because he'll do things like all that for a bit, while everyone giggles and all the girls start blushing, and then everything else is everything else. But yeah, let's say Marvel, Mandalorian, Goldblum, musical.
What would you all choose? Regina, if you had to choose of those 4, and you can only be a guest on one, which one would you pick?
Easy. WandaVision, because then I'd get to hang out with Paul Bettany dressed up like the Vision, and I'm just good.
Okay.
After that point, I can die happy.
Nathan?
Ooh, my heart says Marvel, because make my Marvel, but my head says Mandalorian, because I'm thinking convention residuals. Yeah, I'll sign your picture for $25 a pop. Yeah, that's me. I was alien number 4.
And don't forget, you can do photo ops for 3 times as much.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mandalorian for me. I mean, they could have come to me and said, okay, we're going to give you 4 choices, and which one of these, and you can only be on one. Which one of these would you like to do? Number 1 is the Star Wars show. That one. I don't have to hear the other options. Star Wars, and Star Wars. Okay, so the results were The Mandalorian pulled 62% of the vote. Marvel pulled 24% of the vote. High School Musical pulled 10% of the vote. And Jeff Goldblum pulled 5% of the vote.
Wow.
Wild.
Yeah.
That's low. That's low for Goldblum, I've got to say.
It'd be interesting to do that poll again after everybody's had a chance to actually see every one of these.
Oh, yeah.
If that would change anybody's mind at all. If Jeff Goldblum would get a few more votes for his show. Because I don't think I'm going to watch High School Musical. I'm not sure I'm the target audience for that. But the rest of those I plan on watching. I'm glad we're talking about this today, about WandaVision, despite the fact that the series itself doesn't come out for a couple of years. But, you know... I feel like I say that, and then I blink, and then it's 2 years later. So while that feels like it's a long way away, it won't take long for 2021 to get here, especially since we're going to be busy watching so many things leading up to that year. But I think this was a good topic anyway, because even though we can't watch it yet until that year, I have to think that there are people out there that are wondering how these two are an item, and why that's worthy of a show. And so I think that maybe the best way to kind of start this is talking about just that aspect of it. They are kind of a unique couple for obvious reasons when you think of what the Vision is, even though his origin story differs a little bit in the MCU as opposed to the comics, but you still have two very different kinds of beings here, but one thing they have in common is they both had kind of troubled, tricky pasts, which also made them kind of a good couple, but also led to apparently some tumultuous times in the comics as well. So I think that's a good place to start. How did these two become an item in the comics?
Well, it's actually kind of funny. In the comic book, you know, they always made sense as a couple. They were a unique pairing. But like you mentioned, they have, many things in common. They're both treated as outcasts. They weren't really entirely trusted when they joined the Avengers because, of their semi-villainous backgrounds. They're both technically the offspring of, two of the Marvel Universe's most notorious villains, Scarlet Witch being the daughter of Magneto, and then the Vision having been at the time created by Ultron. Um, in the comic book world, they were actually initially put together because it was convenient at the time. The Vision and Scarlet Witch were only appearing in one Avengers book, and unlike most of their teammates, didn't have a solo series. So Steve Englehart realized it would be really easy to put them together, and then it's one of those comic book, magical things that happens where people read it and they absolutely love it, and so then they are written together over and over again. Eventually, they get married. They move to the suburbs, attempt to lead a normal life. But what makes, the Scarlet Witch and the Vision so compelling is that they're perceived very, very differently than their other teammates. When Captain America walks down the street, people treat him like a celebrity. They try to move into a regular neighborhood to, live a married life and be a heroes on the side. And, you've got a woman who's both a mutant and a witch at the same time, married to an android husband. So their reception was very, very different. There's incredible strengths to their relationship, but the idea of these two outcasts who are sort of not always trusted by the people around them, and them having to find their strength in each other is incredibly beautiful, but it also leads to times when it's devastatingly rocky. So reading these stories is just all over the place. It is so good. It's such a roller coaster, and I'm hoping that they're going to be giving us doses of that in the show, because I think it's going to be sort of their story of them falling in love, because we haven't really seen a whole lot of that in the movies.
My experience with the Scarlet Witch and Vision, it was one of those harrowing ones that actually caused me to get out of comics for a bit. And I say that with a perfectly straight face, for the most part. The continuity on Scarlet Witch is so crazy and so jacked up. I'm really glad the MCU took her and put her in the Avengers, because one thing they've done consistently well is shore up the continuity and just make it make sense. They've taken out anything that's sort of suspect or dodgy, and they've made it, I won't say more palatable, but just a better story. It's more compact, it's tighter. I know from my readings of Scarlet Witch with House of M and some of those other bits and bobs that go on. Yeah, I know that her parentage has been in doubt over many different writers. She's got kids, and then she doesn't have kids, and then she's got kids again. I know that she was a mutant, and then she wasn't a mutant, and it's actually just because she's magic, and that's how come she has powers, and that's why both Fox and I guess Marvel Studios could use her both in their movies if they wanted to. Yeah, it's a thorny one. Whereas the Vision has always just been that robot dude who was created by Ultron and ends up being a pretty decent chap, all things considered.
Yeah.
Even though he does have his moments, or at least the other characters around him, like Wonder Man or whatever else, have their moments where they get a little bit jealous of him for whatever reason. But yeah, the one thing I could say about Vision and Scarlet Witch is that I really enjoy how they have been created or framed to fit into the MCU narrative. It makes sense. I get to enjoy these characters for a bit, and I'm just excited to see them do their thing on Disney Plus. And then also, it sounds like the Doctor Strange 2 movie with mentioning the multiverse, that might be the pivot point for the next phase and the phase after that, to sort of set that up. Anytime you say multiverse and you start kind of having these other plot lines, like branching plot lines, and you can go back and do things, you can bring new people in. That's the character they were going to go with, probably. Her and Doctor Strange is just perfect together. And so, yeah, that's what I know about Scarlet Witch and Vision. You know, even Marvel Unlimited doesn't make it easy to go back through a selected reading of that character and really get to grips with her, because she's just had her hands in so much, and so many writers have messed with her so much.
What I'm wondering, Regina, is, you talked about the aspect of their love story, but we also know, as Nathan brought up, I mean, there's been other things they dealt with regarding the, I know that there was a point where they supposedly had kids, and then they realized it was actually just something that she had somehow made appear that wasn't real.
Yeah, it was either Wanda's subconscious, depending on who's writing it. It was either Wanda's subconscious, or they were shards of the demon Mephisto's soul. So if you want any more of that weirdness, go read House of M. But yeah,
I mean, obviously they can put aspects of that into the show. I don't know if, from a television standpoint, if that's enough to carry a program that's really supposed to somehow be tied into this next phase and still be part of the larger story. Now, granted, we don't know what they're doing with it. The only thing that we've heard, and I don't even know if anybody said, yeah, she's right. I mean, Elizabeth has come out and said that it takes place in the 50s. Which is interesting if that's true. But I'm wondering, from a comic book perspective, you mentioned the love story, but what about the heroism? The typical superhero things that we see happen in comics, and how they handled those things as a couple.
Well, they handled those things, relatively well. Eventually, they ended up joining the West Coast Avengers together. But even when they were trying to live in the suburbs, they were constantly going out and, trying to defeat as much evil as they could while still having time for each other, because their relationship is like a huge part of their personalities. And even after they weren't together anymore, it affected them for a really, really long time. Their relationship has made them so in sync with each other that when they fight together, it is incredibly, incredibly cool. Something that I don't think I need to see in the show is them showing me that the Scarlet Witch can overpower the Vision, because we've already seen that in the movie and we know she can do it. She did it in the comics. She does it in the movie. She's always going to be stronger. But together, they're able to accomplish really, really wild things. They can do Avengers level stuff of, saving the city or multiple cities, or they can do some really like wonky 1985 Scarlet Witch and the Vision zombie hunting. They're really all over the place. So this show, if it is taking place in the 50s, I think they can pull it off, because we all know of, Wanda's sort of reality warping powers, and then especially with Doctor Strange being involved, I think it's going to make it a story that is definitely going to have some really good footing. I think that you're right. I think that if they hadn't gotten Doctor Strange in on this, then it could just be like, well, it's a very cool love story, but I don't know really how it's going to fit into the grand scheme of things. But, there was an Avengers story where Wanda was actually a candidate for being Sorcerer Supreme in Doctor Strange's absence. And there was a time when she teamed up with him against this army called the Empirical, and their leader was called the Imperator. And if that's not just some of the coolest stuff ever, I don't know what is. But basically, they're a robot army that wants to purge magic. They're very scary, sort of Ultron-esque, which is something that would fit really easily back into the MCU, I think. If anybody's listening, I think it would be very cool to get some empirical action in here. But I think there's a lot they can do just because of how powerful Wanda is and how compelling the Vision is.
I guess their love story, it's been a really compelling catalyst, I think, to launch other stories in the Marvel continuity. I know whenever they first started out with Wanda's powers, she just had the Hexy stuff, right? Where she could just like mess with you a bit, almost like altering I think, isn't it like altering the probability of something was going to happen, or just give you bad luck or something like that. And then by House of M, her powers have swelled so much, being reinforced by magic and so on over the years, that she's up there with almost like Dark Phoenix level. She depowered, I think, was it 90% of all the mutants in House of M?
No more
And
mutants.
just, yeah, and just kind of had this psychotic break. And it was a really big deal for everyone when it happened. That's how strung out she gets when it comes to the Vision.
Yeah.
And so, the thing I'm waiting for, I guess, with WandaVision is I'm waiting for that break. I'm waiting for that mental projection in their head where they're living in the 50s. There's a grown Monica Rambeau in there. We know in the current MCU she's younger. I'm ready for her to do something so scary and so stupid and so reality threatening that Doctor Strange has to get involved and kind of like lever them out of it somehow. I just...
That would be amazing.
Yeah. And, Lizzie Olsen has the chops to pull it off as well. The WandaVision show, I know whenever they were talking about it at the Hall H panel, they were saying it's going to be dark, it's going to be trippy. Paul Bettany said that he has no idea what's going on with it. None of it makes sense to him. Yeah. So I'm really hoping it's, how, I guess the best of the Fox mutant bits has been Legion, one's super trippy, reality
that's what
changed.
I was just thinking.
Yeah, now an MCU take on that, I think that's going to be awesome. I hope that's where they go with it. To me, that's the natural course it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we've seen they've even had a little bit of that evolution of powers, even with this version of Scarlet Witch, because when we first saw her, you thought that her main, if you've never seen her before, you may think the main thing she does is she can, get into your head, make you see stuff. And then by the time we get to Endgame, actually by the time we get to Civil War, when she does overpower Vision, and then the next thing you know, she's doing big things in the fight against Thanos and Thanos' minions as well. So we've seen her abilities not only evolve in comics but also in the MCU. So now if things get trippy, I mean, there's just all kinds of places you can go there.
Yeah, and I think Nathan's right, because she needs to do something that makes people kind of look at her and be like, oh my God, wait, do we have sort of, the wolf in our bed over here? Because she's got immeasurable powers, and part of what makes their relationship so lasting, even when they're not able to be together, is, you've got Vision, who's a robot who just wants to, feel love and be loved. And then you've got, Scarlet Witch, who's someone who wants to be with someone who doesn't hate or fear her. And with the way they've been writing her, we don't really feel any of that hate or fear yet. Not to the extent that at least people have felt it in the comic books. So I think, Nathan, that's really apt. I think she's going to do something absolutely bonkers, and people are going to be like, hold on a minute, we might need to reevaluate this chick.
Well, because the last time we looked, whenever everyone came back from the snap, there were a couple of people who didn't, right?
Yeah.
There was no Black Widow, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm losing all my nerd bona fides if I am, but there's no Vision as well, right? He's
right.
Gone. He's finito. And that was the love of her life. So, they didn't really play too much into the relationship apart from the beginning of Infinity War. But if Paul Bettany is in WandaVision, which he is, well, how is he going to be manifested on the screen? How is he going to come back apart from some, skullduggery or some trickery that has bad news for everyone else? I'm just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping it's not going to be some sort of depressing John Byrne Vision Quest storyline. Not that I hated that storyline, but the Vision is basically dismantled and nearly destroyed. He gets rebuilt, but he's completely stripped of his emotional capacity, and so he can no longer feel or understand love. So he and Scarlet Witch are, pretty much over at this point. And I do think that's a road they could go down, if his Infinity Stone has been destroyed. He technically could probably be rebuilt somehow, but he wouldn't be the same. And I don't know if I need an entire show full of her putting the pieces back together.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like if they put him back together and maybe, Scarlet Witch isn't cool with it, so Wanda goes inside his head and she's trying to work out what's going on and there's nothing. And so as part of her mental projection, she puts them in as, I don't know, we're going to the 50s, so maybe she's Lucille Ball and he's Desi Arnaz, and they're getting all kinds of crazy hijinks, and he's like, Wanda, you got some splaining to do, and then he kind of realizes the power of love, and then, they get back together, and then, oh gosh, it's all gone pear-shaped for everyone because... in the meantime, reality has gone and done something crazy, and Doctor Strange has to come and fix it because that's what he does. I don't know. But, as interesting as Scarlet Witch is, one of the best comic book series in recent years was The Vision.
Yes.
Written by Tom King. I mean, CIA analyst Tom King, right? I mean, he's got some bona fides there. He's a smart guy. And he's also had a killer run on Batman recently. He's got his own family now, I understand, or at least did, with his own robot kids.
Yes.
So how do you think that plays into the mix? Do you think they're going to touch that, or is that just a really cool aside for people who want to learn a bit more about the Vision?
I think it would be really awesome if they touched that, just because I think that series is so genius, just complete and utter gold. I think it would be amazing. If not, I'm okay with it. I honestly think, a whole lot of this android family that he built for himself is designed based on everything he went through with Scarlet Witch. He's built himself, an android wife, 2 children, which seems, representative of the twins that they had and lost and had and lost. A lot of what takes place in, Tom King's book isn't just about, oh, well, here's Vision and his new life. It sort of looks back on the history that he and Scarlet Witch shared in a really deep and beautiful way that sort of leans into why he's decided to create this reality for himself. And, like you said, their story is sort of all over the place when it comes to, comic book stories. And I feel like we're starting to get into reading recommendation territory right here. So we're going to go ahead and say The Vision by Tom King and Michael Walsh is probably my main recommendation. But, these stories can be told and retold, and all of the preceding stories can still count, but readers' understanding of the characters will change throughout their publishing history. And so I think to have something as beautifully made as, Tom King's book is a perfect sort of introduction into what we may be seeing in the show.
Well, there is a article on Screen Rant written by Thomas Bacon, who goes through all this, and what he writes is, the film carefully stressed that Vision could survive without the Mind Stone, which is why the Avengers attempted to remove it before Thanos arrived. What's more, attentive comic book readers will have noted that Vision's death scene actually hinted at a future resurrection. The key fact was that his body turned white when the Mind Stone was torn from his forehead. This is lifted straight from the John Byrne's Avengers West Coast run, where one arc saw Vision destroyed and put back together by Hank Pym. In the comics, Vision's computer matrix is just as complex as in the movies, albeit with different constituent parts. His brain patterns were based on those of another superhero, Wonder Man, who was never entirely comfortable with the fact that the Vision was essentially his copy. Although Hank Pym was able to rebuild the Vision, Wonder Man was unwilling to donate his mental patterns, in part because he realized it would reveal his own hidden love for Wanda. The result was a new version of Vision, one largely bereft of any humanity at all. As the comics put it, it was as though Vision's very soul had been ripped out of him. Visually, Marvel signified this dramatic change in Vision's character by turning him ghost white.
And there's been some pretty, hard to read stuff with that, because basically there's been times where he lost his consciousness, was put in a hologram, and, so he could still function and communicate, but he became, completely intangible. I think it's not going to be out of this world for us to see him rebuilt, but just not be, the full Vision that we're used to.
All right. Well, Nathan, did you have any recommendations for anybody?
There's so much Scarlet Witch craziness out there. I'm going to say, like I recommend to all my friends, rather than get stuck in on any graphic novels, Marvel Unlimited is the best bang for your buck with catching up with that stuff. And, even the recommended reading, it didn't work for me, but the fact that you have so much to choose from and you can follow the story arcs as you want at your own pace, for about $7 a month. No paid promotion here. Just, I'm a fan. I had it. When I get some free time, I'll get it again. Big fan of that service. That's where I would go for that. Just read as much of that Scarlet Witch stuff as you can handle in one go, but definitely make time for the Vision, because it really is one of the best comics in recent years. Absolutely, hands down.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much for staying with us today to discuss this. It was great to hear all the perspectives and all the theories that we could shove into one show for what they may do with this TV series when it comes out in a couple of years.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Nerding out is what I like to do best. So I was really grateful to do it with you guys. Absolutely.
Well, that is going to wrap up things for today's show, but we will be back in 2 weeks with a new episode.
In the meantime, remember you can stream or download any episode of the show at DisneyPlusStreamcast.com. You can also subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher.
And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DisneyPlusCast for news, talk, and of course, Twitter polls. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye-bye! I'm just kidding. Bye, everybody.
The entertainment, adventure, and magic on Disney Plus never stops. So join us for the next episode of the Disney Plus Streamcast. You can subscribe to the show on podcast providers like iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Search, stream, or download any episode on our website. While you're there, get news updates, watch videos, follow us on social media, and check out the Streamcast Spotlight. Just go to DisneyPlusStreamcast.com. Thank you for listening.